Think you know history? Think again. For centuries, the story of human civilization has been told on the plains of Mesopotamia, the banks of the Nile, and the shores of the Mediterranean. We speak of Rome, of Egypt, of Greece, empires whose ruins stand proud against the open sky, etched into every school textbook. But what if I told you that entire, vast civilizations, perhaps just as complex, just as magnificent, have been utterly erased from that common knowledge, swallowed whole by a force far more ancient and relentless than time itself, the jungle? We're not talking about obscure footnotes in a dusty book. We're talking about ghost cities, cities that once sprawled for miles, supported millions of souls, cities built with staggering engineering genius, only to be abandoned and entombed beneath an impenetrable green canopy. This isn't a theory. This is a journey into tangible, astonishing ruins that are being discovered today. We are peeling back the leaves, scraping away the moss, and finally, after centuries of silence, we are proving that human history is far more mysterious, far more intricate, and vast than we ever imagined. Imagine an entire world that simply vanished. From the deep, unyielding heart of the Amazon, where advanced societies flourished long before Europe's Middle Ages, to the tangled, forgotten river systems of Southeast Asia, where Khmer engineers managed water with breathtaking sophistication, and all the way to the Mesoamerican rainforests, where cities larger than any you've ever seen lay hidden in plain sight. For decades, we relied on crude maps and local legends. But now, thanks to new technology, LiDAR, next-gen drones, and satellite radar, that green wall is finally being pierced. The jungle can hide its secrets, but it can no longer hold them captive. This is more than an expedition. It's a historical correction. It's a revelation about human resilience and ingenuity in the face of unimaginable natural challenges. Will you join us? Join us as we venture into the heart of the wilderness to uncover the forgotten empires of the remote jungles today. We just scratched the surface of history's greatest secret. Now, let's go deeper. Let's talk about the Green Wall, the most formidable barrier history has ever faced. Imagine this, an entire metropolis, a beacon of civilization with monumental temples, vast residential areas, and sophisticated infrastructure. One day, the people leave. Perhaps it was environmental collapse, perhaps war, or perhaps a slow, inevitable decline. But the moment they step away, another force steps in. It's silent, it's relentless, and it's determined to reclaim what was once its own: nature. The jungle is not just a collection of trees. It is a dense, violent, and living organism. It does not simply cover ruins, it actively disassembles them. Tree roots are slow-motion demolition crews, infiltrating every crack in a foundation, pulling stones apart with irresistible force. Humidity and torrential rain dissolve mortar and accelerate decay. Within a single human generation, the most magnificent plaza can become an impenetrable thicket. Within a century, the tallest pyramid becomes nothing more than an oddly shaped hill, draped in moss, and disguised by 100 species of flora. For centuries, this has been the ultimate cloak, history's perfect hiding place. Historians and archaeologists knew the stories were there, whispered in local legends and ancient texts, but the sheer effort required to find them was almost insurmountable. You could be standing directly on top of a major temple and never know it. That's the power of the Green Wall. It doesn't just hide history, it erases it from visibility. And this brings us to a fundamental question. Why did they vanish, and what makes them so elusive, even today? The reason these jungle empires are so fascinating is that their abandonment rarely fits the simple narrative of invasion. Unlike Roman ruins, which were often sacked and rebuilt, these jungle cities often experienced a far more profound systemic collapse. Take the classic Maya period. We're talking about vast, connected city-states in Mesoamerica that thrived for over 6 centuries. Then, between the 8th and 10th centuries AD, the massive cities of the southern lowlands were largely abandoned. This wasn't a quick event. It was a slow, agonizing period known as the Maya collapse. The theories are complex and interlocking. Climate change, specifically severe, multi-year droughts, crippled their agricultural system. Deforestation for building and farming intensified the droughts and led to soil degradation. This environmental crisis was often compounded by endemic warfare, as desperate populations fought over dwindling resources. So, when we look at a ruin in the jungle today, we're not just seeing an abandoned building. We're looking at the final, tragic chapter of a society that pushed its ecological boundaries too far. The jungle's reclamation, therefore, is the final insult, a natural epitaph to a grand experiment in civilization that failed to find sustainable balance. The jungle's silence today is a terrifying echo of the social silence that fell when the last residents walked away, never to return. But for the explorers, the silence is a challenge. For hundreds of years, the challenge was brute force, swinging a machete, walking for weeks. Now, that has changed entirely. This is where the story pivots. The breakthrough in uncovering these forgotten worlds didn't come from a shovel. It came from a laser. For generations, jungle archaeology was defined by the slow, painful process of the grid and trench. But the jungle demands a different solution. The key was to remove the canopy digitally. Enter LiDAR, light detection and ranging. This is where modern technology transcends human capability. Imagine a specialized sensor strapped to a plane or drone, firing hundreds of thousands of laser pulses per second down through the forest. Most pulses hit the leaves, but a small, crucial percentage, the ones that find the tiny gaps, actually penetrate all the way to the forest floor and bounce back. By measuring the time those pulses take to return, scientists can map the landscape beneath the trees, filtering out every single leaf and branch. The results are nothing short of miraculous. What appeared to be a random arrangement of hills suddenly resolves into perfectly straight lines, right angles, colossal pyramids, massive walls, and complex irrigation channels. These are not hills. They are the ghost cities of the past. LiDAR doesn't just confirm known sites. It reveals entire urban networks stretching far beyond previous expectations. It has effectively lifted the green wall, revealing dozens of interconnected settlements, road networks, and sophisticated earthworks. This technology has, in the span of just a decade, rewritten history for the Amazon, for the Maya, and for the Khmer. It's an absolute game changer. This digital revelation changes the game entirely. We are no longer blindly hacking our way through the undergrowth, hoping for a lucky find. We now go in with a treasure map, a detailed, three-dimensional outline of every structure, every plaza, every defense wall. But knowing where they are is only the beginning. The next step is the descent. From the cold, sterile data of the satellite scan, we must move into the humid, chaotic reality of the jungle floor. We must confront the very environment that devoured these empires. Our journey will take us to 3 distinct cradles of civilization, each with its own incredible secrets held captive by the Green Wall. We'll start with the recent, history-shattering discoveries in the Amazon, move on to the monumental engineering of Southeast Asia, and finally look at the dramatic lessons left in Mesoamerica. Get ready to step off the map. The search for history hidden in plain sight begins now. For centuries, the prevailing narrative about the Amazon rainforest was simple. It was a wild, untamable place. A counterfeit paradise, as some early explorers called it. The belief was that the poor, acidic soil and the extreme environment could never sustain large-scale, complex human societies. Therefore, the people who lived there must have been small nomadic tribes, simple hunter-gatherer communities. This belief shaped how we taught history for generations. It allowed us to dismiss the Amazon as merely a footnote in the story of civilization. We were wrong, profoundly, fundamentally wrong. In the last 2 decades, driven by the very technologies we just discussed, LiDAR and high-resolution satellite mapping, we have unearthed evidence that is forcing us to tear up the old textbooks and rewrite the history of the Americas. The Amazon was not a pristine wilderness devoid of large populations. It was, in fact, the home to advanced, structured, and monumental societies that flourished long before the European arrival. Our journey into these forgotten echoes begins in the South American heartland, specifically the region known as the Llanos de Mojos in modern-day Bolivia, a vast savanna that floods seasonally. This area, previously considered too challenging for major agriculture, held the secrets of an ancient people who mastered their environment in astonishing ways. What did the LiDAR scans reveal in the Llanos de Mojos, or the Beni region? They revealed a civilization of earthworkers. People who didn't build in stone, but built on a scale that required incredible social coordination and engineering genius. We found colossal geometric geoglyphs etched into the earth, massive squares and circles of unknown purpose, only visible from above. More importantly, we discovered vast, sophisticated hydraulic systems. Imagine a network of interconnected raised fields, canals, and causeways that spanned hundreds of square miles. These structures weren't accidental. They were designed to manage the seasonal floods of the Amazon basin. The raised fields allowed people to farm during the wet season, keeping their crops above the waterline. The canals served multiple purposes: transportation, fishing, and most crucially, irrigation during the dry season. This level of environmental manipulation meant that the people of the Beni region were not victims of the Amazon. They were its masters. They created a productive, engineered landscape capable of supporting potentially millions of people. These people didn't just survive, they thrived. Their complex societies, such as the recently documented Cautionary culture, organized themselves into settlements that included pyramid structures up to 20 meters tall, surrounded by defensive ditches and earthworks. This was a structured, urbanized world that existed between about 500 and 1400 AD, completely independent of the Inca or the Maya. Their legacy is literally built into the ground, hiding in plain sight. But mastering the waters was only one part of their survival. Remember what I said about the Amazon's poor soil? It's called oxisol, thin, infertile, and quickly exhausted. No major civilization can be built on bad soil. Yet scattered across the Amazon, in areas where these ancient societies were strongest, archaeologists have found patches of incredibly rich, dark earth. It's called terra preta, Portuguese for black earth. This wasn't naturally occurring, it was created. These forgotten Amazonian empires used a revolutionary process of combining charcoal, pottery shards, bone fragments, and organic waste. They essentially manufactured fertile soil over centuries. Terra preta is rich in carbon and nutrients, and it remains productive today. It doesn't wash away like typical Amazonian soil. This tells us something profound. These societies didn't just build cities, they practiced sustainable, long-term environmental stewardship. They understood the fragility of their ecosystem and engineered a permanent solution to its greatest weakness. The terra preta is a living monument to their ingenuity, a quiet, constant echo of their scientific advancement. It proves they were not primitive. They were innovators who solved a problem that still plagues modern agriculture. So, what does this first stop tell us? The lost cities and earthworks of the Amazon are not just ruins. They are powerful testaments to human ingenuity in the face of unimaginable natural challenges. They remind us that history is not linear, and brilliance can bloom anywhere, regardless of environment. They force us to discard the racist and outdated notions that complexity only arose in specific geographic locations. The Amazon was not empty, it was full. And it was full of people who were sophisticated, skilled engineers and environmental managers. Now that we understand the depth of this history and the nature of the challenges they overcame, we must ask, did other jungle empires face similar ecological crises? And how did they solve them? We leave the sprawling earthworks of the Amazon and move halfway across the globe to the verdant, tangled jungles of Southeast Asia, where we will discover monuments built not of mud, but of stone, and a water system that defined the very shape of an empire. We've seen how the Amazonian empires mastered the earth itself, building with mud and sophisticated engineering to harness the power of water. Now let's travel halfway around the globe to Southeast Asia, where a different kind of ambition shaped the jungle. Here, civilization was built not only with earth, but with stone. Monumental, breathtaking, and defiant. When you think of ancient jungle cities, you probably picture Angkor Wat, a sprawling complex of temples in Cambodia, famous for its magnificent architecture and intricate bas-reliefs. Angkor Wat is the face of the Khmer Empire, the largest pre-industrial city in the world. It's a testament to incredible power, religion, and artistry. But here is the crucial distinction. Angkor Wat is not the entire story. It is just the most visible, most beautiful piece of a colossal puzzle. For generations, we focused on the temple, failing to see the urban monster surrounding it, and more importantly, failing to see its predecessors and rivals hidden just miles away. The jungle here, just like in the Amazon, became a guard, patiently swallowing the evidence of an even more complex, forgotten urban landscape. Our focus shifts slightly north, to the jungles covering Phnom Kulen, the sacred mountain plateau. For centuries, folklore told of a lost city here, the birthplace of the Khmer Empire. It was called Mahendra Parvata, the mountain of the great Indra, but it was considered a mythical king's dream, too deep and too vast to truly exist. The jungle held the secret tightly. Phnom Kulen is densely forested and notoriously difficult to navigate. Yet, in 2012, everything changed. Once again, technology provided the key. A massive LiDAR survey of the region was commissioned, and what it revealed was mind-blowing. The myth was real, and it was massive. Underneath the dense canopy of Phnom Kulen, the LiDAR maps showed a sprawling, interconnected grid. Mahendra Parvata was not a small settlement. It was a complex city established centuries before Angkor Wat, dating back to 802 AD. It was the original capital, the strategic powerhouse where Jayavarman the Tik, the founder of the Khmer Empire, declared independence. The scans showed streets, house foundations, defensive walls, and most astonishingly, an intricate system of reservoirs and weirs, small dams, used to divert and control the flow of water coming off the mountain. This wasn't just a city. It was a strategically positioned water fortress, built to command the resources necessary for a burgeoning empire. The scale of this rediscovery means we now have to completely readjust our timeline of Khmer history. The early Khmer weren't just talented temple builders, they were master city planners who built their sprawling hydraulic infrastructure right into the unforgiving landscape. The true genius of Mahendra Parvata, and indeed the early Khmer, lies in their ability to manage water. In Southeast Asia, the challenge isn't just surviving the forest, it's surviving the cycle of extreme monsoon flooding, followed by severe dry seasons. The Khmer engineers solved this environmental dilemma with an audacious, centralized system. The LiDAR showed a planned grid, deliberately placed to collect the abundant rainfall from the mountain. They built huge reservoirs, artificial lakes known as barae, to store the water during the wet season. This water wasn't just for drinking, it was channeled through a network of canals that fed vast rice paddies, allowing for multiple harvests per year. This capability to feed a massive, non-agricultural population was the engine of the Khmer Empire. Controlling the water meant controlling the economy, the military, and the very structure of the society. It was a masterpiece of hydro-engineering, the lifeblood of their civilization. These complex systems, now largely overgrown and hidden, are the true guardians of the lost. They weren't just structures. They were the very reason these massive populations could exist in a seemingly hostile environment. They represent a level of strategic environmental adaptation that rivals any ancient civilization in the world. We've traveled from the earthwork mastery of the Amazon to the hydraulic genius of the Khmer. Now, our final jungle classroom lies in Mesoamerica, in the dense, steamy heart of the Petén Basin in Guatemala and Mexico. This is where the story of jungle empires takes its most dramatic and perhaps most cautionary turn. When people think of the Maya, they think of an ancient, mysterious civilization, famous for their calendars, mathematics, and stunning stone pyramids like those at Tikal. But the Maya story, like the Khmer's, is far more complex than the famous tourist sites suggest. The jungle here has acted as the ultimate guardian, concealing not just great cities, but perhaps the single greatest secret of human history. The fragility of advanced civilization. The Maya did not fade, they collapsed. And the dramatic nature of their vanishing act offers us a stark mirror for our own world today. Our focus is not on the classic period cities that eventually crumbled, but on the truly colossal pre-classic giants that paved the way. Cities so large they dwarf even Tikal. We are going deep into the rainforest to talk about El Mirador. Imagine a city that flourished centuries before the famous Maya centers of the classic period. A city that reached its peak around the 3rd century BC, when Rome was still a fledgling republic. That city is El Mirador, the lookout. El Mirador is breathtaking not just because of its age, but its sheer size. Hidden beneath the relentless canopy, it contains some of the largest pyramids ever built by human hands. Take La Danta, for example. This structure, a complex of platforms and temples, is by volume one of the largest man-made constructions in the world. It's significantly bigger than any pyramid in Tikal and larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It required untold millions of man-hours to complete. But size is not the only lesson. El Mirador was the center of the Mirador Basin, an interconnected supercity network, joined by long, raised causeways called Sac Bayab, the White Roads. These aren't simple paths. Some were up to 40 meters wide and kilometers long, built high above the seasonal swamp floor, showcasing an advanced understanding of logistics and massive social organization. These discoveries, once again, made possible by LiDAR, prove that the complex societies of the Maya did not gradually evolve into greatness. They sprang forth with incredible, monumental power centuries earlier than previously believed. The question then becomes, if they were so large, so advanced, and so powerful, why did they collapse so utterly? El Mirador was largely abandoned by the 1st century AD, a precursor to the later, more famous classic Maya collapse. Its story is a preview of history's great lesson. The evidence points not to a single catastrophic event, but to a slow, agonizing death by 1,000 cuts, all rooted in unsustainable growth and environmental pressure. First, deforestation. To build structures like La Danta and to create the massive amounts of stucco needed to plaster their temples, the Maya needed incredible quantities of wood, all harvested from the rainforest. They essentially clear-cut their own backyard. This massive deforestation changed the microclimate, increasing local temperatures and reducing the ability of the ground to retain water. Second, the resulting climate crisis. Evidence from lake beds and cave formations shows a clear correlation. Periods of intense, multi-year drought coincided precisely with the abandonment phases of these massive cities. When the rain stopped, the overstressed system failed. Their complex hydraulic and agricultural methods couldn't withstand the lack of input. Finally, social and political stress. When food became scarce, belief in the divine rulers, the kings who guaranteed the rains, eroded. This led to internal conflict, warfare between city-states over dwindling resources, and eventually, a mass migration out of the major urban centers. The jungle was not merely claiming ruins, it was offering a final, silent sanctuary to the survivors. What do the ghostly ruins of El Mirador and the vast, forgotten networks of the Maya tell us? They tell us that even the most ingenious, most organized, and most technologically advanced ancient civilizations, those who mastered their environment for centuries, are ultimately fragile. Their failure was a failure to find balance. They pushed their ecosystem beyond its tipping point, and when the climate finally shifted, they had no resilience left. We began this journey by challenging your understanding of history. We end it by issuing a challenge to your understanding of our future. The lessons written in stone and earth, from the Amazon to Cambodia and here in the Batin Basin, are not just historical footnotes. They are warnings. They are a powerful, enduring echo of what happens when advanced societies lose their connection to the environment that sustains them. The jungle guards its secrets, but the lessons it holds are open for us to learn. We've journeyed through the Amazon, navigated the ancient canals of Southeast Asia, and stood on the mighty ruins of Mesoamerica. We've proven that history's greatest empires didn't just fall, They were deliberately hidden by the green wall. But if the last decade was about the initial discovery, the proof of concept that LiDAR works, the next decade will be about scale and speed. The pace of discovery is only accelerating. We're moving beyond simply mapping the jungle floor. We're now deploying AI-powered archaeological analysis. Sophisticated algorithms are learning to identify patterns in the LiDAR data, not just pyramids, but subtle, human-made features like garden plots, terracing, and ancient trails that human eyes might miss. Next-generation drone technology can survey vast, inaccessible areas in days, replacing years of grueling fieldwork. This means that the thousands of unnamed structures we've seen on our digital maps are about to be transformed into physical reality. Entire new civilizations, perhaps older, perhaps larger than any we've discussed, are waiting to be confirmed. The unfinished map of the jungle world is rapidly being filled in. So what do these forgotten empires teach us? They teach us that human ingenuity knows no bounds, flourishing in the most challenging environments on Earth. They remind us that our history is vast and deeply mysterious. But most critically, they offer us a profound, timeless warning that even the most advanced, most powerful societies are ultimately fragile. The collapse of the Maya, the abandonment of Mahendraparvata, these were lessons in overreach, in environmental exhaustion, and in the failure to adapt. These aren't just stories about the past. They are urgent ecological and social lessons for our world today. The jungle continues to guard its secrets, serving as the ultimate archive of human failure and triumph. The hunt for these lost empires is far from over. In fact, it's the most important historical and ecological mission of our time. What undiscovered marvels still lie hidden beneath that verdant canopy, waiting for us to find them? The question is no longer if we will find them, but when.